Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. This week we're talking about shame, our hidden enemy.
The thing nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah. It's that feeling that we all know, that feeling that there's something wrong with us, that we did something bad.
You know, I think the good thing about talking about it, Kevin, is that until we voice it, we believe that.
Yeah.
We believe that we have done something bad or wrong.
Yeah, and I like to call it the hidden enemy because we keep it intentionally hidden, because we don't want other people to know about our shame. The truth is, we didn't earn that shame. It was given to us without our choice. We didn't have a choice, but that doesn't mean that we did something wrong, that there's something bad with us.
Right, and that we think that there's something wrong with us because this kind of thing doesn't happen, right? And so we think if it's happened to us, that there must be something about us.
Truthfully, I think a lot of us think maybe it was something I did, or maybe there's something wrong with me, and that's why they did this to me. So
exactly. And I think that for the whole thing of shame is so hard because it all blends into who we are. We think that event is who we are, how it folds over into every aspect of our life.
It can take over our lives, especially since we're hiding that shame from everyone, and by hiding that shame, it restricts our emotions. So we kind of limit all of our emotions by hiding something from everyone.
And here's the thing for me is I just never wanted to say anything because I thought if people knew what happened, they would judge me. And so I didn't want to say to anybody what had happened. And so because of that, I hid my shame and I didn't even know it. But it's sort of like when you eat garlic, how it comes out your pores. It comes out in our behavior and the way we respond to other people.
There's really no obvious solution to it. We don't know necessarily how to address it. There's no rules on how you deal with shame other than just bottle it up and hide it.
Right, and there are no rules, but I mean, the one thing I've really admired about you in this journey is that you have found a way to deal with the shame.
Yeah.
It was outside of you, right? It was through God?
Yeah, well,
forgiveness?
I think you have to realize that, I mean, you have to come to a place where you realize we didn't earn the shame. It isn't ours. It's actually, the shame is on the person who abused us, on whoever abused us. By coming to that point, you realize that what matters is where you stand. So we all have issues because of what happened to us, and that's not surprising. That's just, I mean, of course we're going to have issues. What was done to us was pretty traumatic, and so we're going to have issues, but what matters is how we deal with those issues. Do we take responsibility for having those issues, and do we actually address them, or do we just bottle them up?
Well, I can say for me, I just bottled them up because I felt, first of all, like what we talked about last time, is I was pretty sure nobody would believe me. And then it was like the person who had hurt me was kind of like a big name in the community. So I had that going against me. So it's like you just think, I don't know, I think until you voice it, then I was like, duh, it wasn't my fault. But until you put words to it, I think it just believes that it's our fault. We were probably told that, or told if you tell, somebody will die or whatever. So I think the biggest thing is to be able to first say it.
Yeah, and believe believe it yourself that you weren't responsible. Because I think a lot of it is we're ashamed of what was done to us, but we're also ashamed of who we are because of what was done to us.
Right. I feel like it feels like everybody knows that something has happened to you. You feel like, and if I do tell someone, they will think I'm horrible because I think I'm horrible.
One of the things that I remember is I always felt like people would know my secret if I didn't keep it really hidden. If it ever got out, then everyone would know, and they would treat me like there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so I did. I just kept it bottled up, kept it hidden, and I used to be actually, just afraid of being around other people's kids because I thought they could figure out there was something wrong with me. I don't know why, especially children. I knew that they could figure it out. I'm not sure exactly why, but I was always afraid of, I always wanted to be a teacher or be in a teaching role, but I was always afraid of kids knowing something was wrong with me.
Oh, interesting.
But
I remember feeling that fraud thing, like, if they really get to know me, they're going to know that I'm just really a bad person.
Yeah. So once you've realized that shame belongs on someone else and we didn't earn it, how do we get past the shame?
That's a good question, and I think for everybody it's different, and I think the most important thing is to recognize shame and that it's not ours. And if somebody's listening and they're feeling that shame, which is hard to explain, but shame says, I'm bad, I'm wrong. And so if you're feeling that, maybe there's something more to explore, to go get help, to go to a counselor, because we don't always remember up front what happened if we've had to stuff it. And shame, it's a stealer and a liar, and it takes our life. For me, I do believe forgiveness was a big issue, but I think when I got validated finally, when somebody believed me, that made all the difference. It was like, oh, okay, because the person still never fessed up or owned up and said I was crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard to know how to go on. How do you go on and be the best you can be, not live that place of I'm nobody, I don't matter? How do you find that place of I matter, I'm important, and I have a voice, and I don't have to own this story anymore? What was it like for you? Where would you say you got your relief or you got your first recognition of, oh my gosh, this is shame?
Well, a lot of the shame for me was also I felt like I would never be a capable person. I think, I kind of had a feeling of just I was always going to be flawed. I was always going to be imperfect. There was always something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, once I talked about what happened, once I first started talking about it, then I started doing research and going to therapy because I realized I needed help with this. And after looking at the issues I had, I started taking responsibility for my own issues. I think that's a big part of it is I think you have to realize that, yes, we didn't earn this shame, but because of what happened to us, we do have issues, and those issues do affect our lives in a lot of ways. And it is our responsibility to learn what our issues are and learn how to address them. It's not fun. It's not easy. No. It's really hard at times. But that's where our responsibility lies. And taking that responsibility, for me, was a way of owning up to what I needed to do. And then I realized that, where I stood as far as I knew that what was done to me didn't have to define who I was.
Right. And I think, too, it's that victim thing, and that as long as we stay in the victim, they still have the power. And it's not a conscious thing that we do, and that's why talking about it is so important. And I think for me, one time I did something really crazy. It was before key fobs and cell phone, and I was out feeding the horses, and I left my dog in the car, and dog pushed down all the lock buttons, and I was out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I'm so stupid. I'm always so stupid. I mean, I just started in on myself, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is all that? And I realized that was my shame. My shame was that voice that said, I'm broken, I'm flawed, I'm never going to be good enough for anybody else, let alone myself. And then I realized, I mean, I think this was the grace of God, because it wasn't like anybody told me this, is I realized, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. I don't always do stupid things, but sometimes I do. And so I was learning then to change my language. And I think that when we say it out loud, then we can begin to change the language. And then we can, like you said, we can begin to see, oh, man, I think I need some help. Because there's part of us that says, oh, it wasn't that bad.
Or there's also a part of us that say we don't matter, so we don't deserve it to get help, because we're taught that we don't matter, and we're taught that we're just an object. And so sometimes we buy into that. I know I kind of bought into that I just didn't matter. I just assumed I was doomed, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So I had to change that.
Listen anyway, right?
Yeah. And I never thought that I was going to get anywhere to begin with, so I didn't think the issues I had really mattered. It was just...
It affected your career because you wanted to be like a teacher.
Yeah, there was a lot of things I wanted to do that I didn't, because I was busy doing drugs and alcohol and spiraling down a path of just self-abuse, basically. Yeah. I think when we're taught that we don't matter, then we project that.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so true. To ourselves and to others.
Yeah, it's funny, but I know a lot of people are struggling right now with the whole being stuck at home with the coronavirus, and they feel like, oh, all this time I'm just trapped. My life is passing before me, and I think of how many years I just spent wasted because I just really thought I wasn't going to do anything anyway, so I just wasted it. And I look back and I know a huge thing about shame is once we kind of get over the shame, then comes the sorrow of what did happen to us and what we lost because of it. And I think that's something, I mean, I think shame is something we can get over. I know we can, because I'm pretty much over it. But the sorrow is, I mean, the loss doesn't go away. But
right. And I think there's a grieving process of all that was lost.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not like, oh, it happened, we're done, amen, mayonnaise. It's like, no, there was a big loss in my life. It doesn't mean I can't make something of my life still, but that thing I wanted was basically taken from me.
Yeah. Because
of that. And I think that it is a process, like grief is a process, that we recognize it. When we start to believe we matter, then we can take that abuse and go, wait a minute, that shouldn't have happened. You know, a lot of times we see ourselves always as adults, and we forget that we were children. And so if we can see ourselves as that child, you know, when we look back, we just seem to, you know, it's like we look back from where we are. Yeah. And if we can look back and see a 5-year-old or whatever the age is, and then we go, oh my gosh, I was just a kid.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know? And we can at least find some perspective on letting go of our self-hate and self-loathing because of, you know, whatever we've had to tell ourselves to survive.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important to get past the shame and get through to dealing with your issues, because years can go by. I know for me, years went by, and where I just hid my shame, but I was still ashamed.
Well, you were covering it up with drugs and alcohol, because that's the only way you could figure out how to hide the feelings.
Yeah, how to cope. And so once you get past that and you can start addressing your issues, and you find that your coping methods aren't working, and you can actually start finding things that do work, and you can actually live a decent life that you were looking forward to while you were struggling.
Right. And like you said, a lot of people feel like we're wasting time, but everything that happens in our life, I do not believe it happens for a reason, because I can't believe in a God that says, oh, here's little Kevin, we're going to let this happen to him.
Yeah.
But what I do believe is that we have a free will, and whoever hurts us has a free will. And so I'm not going to say it was meant to be, but what I can say seriously with my full heart is, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
Am I going to remain the victim, or am I going to become a survivor? Because if it's happening and it's going to continue happening, how can we turn it into something where we can actually use it to help other people, which you are doing with this podcast?
And how do you do that? The best ways of actually coping with this are to actually start finding help. And I think for some people, they need to explore what happened to them first, maybe before they actually go out and look for help. For some people, maybe just starting to write about what happened to them and looking at, and then they can figure out what kind of help they want.
And that it is a process, even remembering, even when you journal and you start to go, oh my gosh, because you're older and you recognize, like when you're a kid, you're like, well, I guess he's the boss, you know, and so when you start to recognize it, all of that is such a process of recovery. We don't just go, okay, now I know what happened and I'm good. It's going to take therapy, it's going to take talking about it, maybe talking to family to try and figure out who knows what.
But I think the main step is to realize we did not earn that shame. We didn't have a choice. We weren't given a choice on this whole thing, and the shame does belong on the perpetrator. When we put it in that perspective, we could start looking at, we didn't earn the shame, but we do have issues, and that is kind of what we need to deal with.
Right. And so how was that process for you? How did it start? You told somebody? What was your first step?
Yeah, I told my friend at the time, and then I started realizing that I needed help, and then I did go to therapy. And, you know, actually, when I think about it, first thing I did was I looked up any books I could find, and I started researching it, and I started journaling about it. And I think that helped me get perspective on how I felt about it and what I felt was my issues. It helped me to realize that I did have a lot of dreams and hopes in my life that basically I allowed to just go by. I didn't follow through on them, but they weren't gone. I just didn't do anything with them.
Yeah, so, and I think too, we all have different personalities, and some personalities are more like, I'm going to fight, and others are like, I'm just going to get through this. And I think that we have to kind of know ourselves. And, you know, like people will say, you need to go do this and this and this. Well, that might not be what works for you. And so you have to know yourself, because you have to, as you're walking through this, you have to be able to also protect yourself, which doesn't seem right. It's like if you were in the hospital for something, they would be taking care of you. You wouldn't have to be checking every IV and, you know.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably more help now than there was when we were going through it in the first stages. But I also think that we have to be careful who we tell as we're healing until we feel stronger and know how we really want to step into life after recognizing it and calling it out for what it is.
And it doesn't seem fair that we have to deal with this shame, because, I mean, when you look at it, and that's one of the things I struggle with, even with doing this podcast, because I know, you know, I'm going to tell my friends and family members and other people about the podcast, and I've already told a few people that I'm starting this, and you know, I'm pretty long in my journey here of healing, and it's still issues with shame about, I need to explain to them that I'm a survivor, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, and that still brings up feelings of, how are they going to react? It just doesn't...
I'm going to be judged.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel fair, but no one said it was going to be fair. I mean, we're not given a guarantee of fairness in this life, so I think we have to just admit that there is shame, but it shouldn't be ours.
Right, and I think that when we study shame, like, I love Brene Brown. You know of her, right?
No.
Okay, I'm going to get you on board with her, because she's a shame researcher.
Oh, wow.
And she has a podcast, and she says, if I get on an airplane and I don't want to talk and people ask me what I do, I say I'm a shame researcher, and they're done. They don't want to talk to me.
Yeah, that would work.
The thing about shame is that when you can find some help to understand what it is and how it's affecting you. And then I think once you start to recognize that, you can make your decisions on how you want to deal with these things and how you want to move forward. But that there is help, and there's a lot of help available. And if the first thing you do is call a crisis line, that's okay. If the first thing you do is go to a family member, that's okay, because you've got to do what you need to do, because it's all about you now as you walk through this recovery.
Yeah, it's important to find a comfort place for you. You have to find your own comfort level with this shame, because it doesn't go away instantly. It doesn't even go away completely. For me, I mean, there's still residue shame.
Yeah. I mean, it rears its ugly head every now and then, and I think it gets mixed up with our self-talk, you know. When we are maybe not feeling so great about something and we're like, I'm so dumb or I'm so whatever, then that's where the shame starts to show up. And the more we recognize it, the more we can actually talk to it and be able to turn it around from shame to that's not mine.
So I think those are the main points, but still it's a matter of, when do we get over it? And is there ever getting over it?
I don't want to be like that. I'm always the positive one, but I think along with everything, it's sort of like you walk this journey and you start to feel better, but you don't really see yourself as recovered. And then all of a sudden one day something happens that in the past would have really made you feel horrible and shameful, and it doesn't happen, and you're like, wait a minute, what's happening right now? I think that it's such a slow process, but it's not that we never get over it, but it's that tickler, it's that trigger, and when we start to feel that, that's when we react in ways that we don't want to. And so I think really the most important thing is recognizing it, because every time we recognize it, then we can behave differently.
Yeah, you can learn how to adjust what you feel about yourself, your attitude
like a lot of
towards
times
yourself.
We'll go into defense. We'll get defensive about something, and that's our shame popping up.
But I think as long as we are ashamed of who we are, we're never going to want to talk about it. We're never going to want to address this. We just want to bury it. But if you don't bear it, it's going to hold you back. It
holds you hostage.
Yeah.
Our shame holds us hostage. And the sooner we recognize that and are able to call it out, the sooner we're going to actually be able to live a joyful life. Mm-hmm. And get that mask off of, I'm a horrible person, I'm unworthy, and I hate myself. It's that self-loathing does not serve us at all. But on the other hand, we don't know anything different. I think that's a really good point you have, that we want to recognize it and then move past it.
And also because I think it restricts our emotions, not just having shame, but if we hide and bury our feelings about ourselves, then we never really get to experience all our true feelings. We restrict all our emotions. That includes joy, and that includes being able to express our emotions.
Right.
So as long as we're burying our shame, as long as we're burying it, we also basically put a lid on all of our emotions.
Exactly. And they say, I work a lot with addicts, and they say they have two emotions, like happiness and then extreme sadness. There's no in between. And the whole thing is, we have a range of emotions, but when we've had to shut down because of shame, we're not feeling. And so often with addicts, when they're getting well, I get texts, they're like, I don't like this feeling stuff. I don't want to be feeling, And so there's work to do. And the thing again, it's not our fault that we got this way. It's not our fault this happened to us. Similar to somebody who gets in a terrible accident and loses a leg or whatever. It's like, but how are we going to walk forward with it? And how are we going to not let it run our life? And I think that's the biggest challenge. And that's what I've seen with you, is you've said, this is not going to run my life.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Well, I hope that I can help other people to realize that they don't have to be ashamed.
Right.
That they did not earn that shame.
Well, and if anybody wants to reach out, we have a Facebook page and we have a web page that you can go to. But you can also look online and, you can look up counselors. And also, counselors are human. So you may get one you don't really connect with. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't go, try that. Try another counselor and make a commitment to getting past this, because you have this one life. You're here for a purpose. And although, whatever happened was terrible, was not your fault, you still have a mission. You still have a reason to be here. And I think both of our hope in this podcast is that people will begin to see that they matter, and that even when bad things happen, it doesn't take away our purpose here on earth. It's never too late. You're never too old. You're never too damaged.
Mm-hmm. And it is so important to turn your life around, but you won't do it as long as you're too ashamed to talk about it, as long as you're too ashamed to address it. So the big step is to not be ashamed of who you are anymore.
Right. Which is easier said than done, but yes. I think it takes recognizing it and then, being able to change your language around it, and then find your people that can hear your story and it's not too much. Like, Kevin, you talk about your mom and how it was hard for her to hear your story, but you had already done a lot of work, right? Before she knew.
Yeah.
And you're probably really glad you did, because it probably would have been really hard on you, right?
Yeah, at the time, I wish I didn't have to tell her, but it was a necessary part of my growth, my healing.
Yeah.
But I felt terrible about how it affected her, but I believe that in the long run, it was necessary. And I also believe that I think God showed her that he was working through me and that he could heal. And so he showed her that he could do good things through this terrible situation. He could take something terrible and make it a good thing.
Right. And then, like you said, sometimes if maybe somebody knew it happened but didn't do anything, a sibling, like for me, whichever one of us hid first didn't get it. And I was the older sister. And when I realized that, I was mortified that I didn't protect, that I thought my job was to protect. So then that shame comes in there as well. And that, we have to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to be able to forgive ourselves, and we have to be able to look in the mirror and know that no matter what happened to us, we are God's creation.
We have to find a way of realizing that we didn't really have a choice.
Right. But we do now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the beauty comes in, is that, then we didn't, but now we do, and what will we do?
Exactly. We can choose to get beyond this. We can choose to learn how to heal and have hope.
And like we said, when does the shame go away? The one thing is, healing is very possible. And that's the one thing I would encourage people, that if this is something you're struggling with and you're just now starting to realize, know that there is hope, there is support, there are groups, there is help, and there is a good life ahead of you. And sometimes when we feel like we're damaged goods, we think, okay, we're only going to be able to marry damaged goods, or, we think the good normal people aren't for us because we're too broken. And the sooner we get in touch with that, the sooner we realize how untrue that is. One of the things I say is, listen to your self-talk, because that's something we kind of don't do, and we are so mean to ourselves. We treat ourselves in a way we would never treat anybody else. And so look in the mirror, and just while you're looking, which I know is really hard for some people to look in the mirror and then just listen to what that voice is saying. And if it's saying you're disgusting, you're bad, you're horrible, then you know that that's the enemy talking, and there is help and recovery for you, because that is not the truth. You are a child of God. You were made in his image, and all God ever wanted for you was good things.
So we didn't earn the shame, but we've got to get through it. But the hope...
I love that. We didn't earn it. We didn't deserve it, but we have it. So what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, how do we get past it and move beyond it?
And if you can, go to TED Talks and look up Brene Brown and listen to her TED Talk. about shame, and I think it could really help and open some doors. And like I said, we on our webpage will have resources for you, and hopefully you can reach out to us if that would help. But we just want you to know you're not alone.
Yeah, you don't have to be alone, and you deserve help. You do matter.
Yes. And that was the thing that was the hardest. And I'm not going to lie, that was something I just really got in touch with in later years in my life. That, and it's, again, that's that shame is, how could I have not known that I mattered? But I didn't realize I mattered. And so I lived my life as if I didn't matter. I lived my life in a way that said, oh, well, go ahead and, treat me bad because I don't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, as long as we're living that way, people are not going to respect us. When I meet with my gals that are, getting out of drug addiction, and they go, do I have pick me written on my forehead? I'm like, you kind of do.
Yeah, that's...
Because it comes out of our pores. And so the best thing we can do for ourselves and our family is to get healing.
Yes, and that also helps to end the cycle, because,
right.
until we break that cycle, we treat ourselves poorly, and we can be treating other people poorly because we don't feel like we matter, and so it doesn't matter what we do.
Right, and here's another element. I've known people, and this breaks my heart, but I have known people that were abused by their father or their grandfather. And then they get older, they have kids, and they let that person babysit their kids.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, well, they're older now. They would never do that. And I think, I'm just blown away. And so if we don't realize we matter, we're liable to pass that abuse in that way.
We allow it to continue.
Right?
So.
And so it's really important. And not only do you owe it to yourself, but you owe it to your family to find a way to heal.
So you can be a whole person for them.
Right. And I will tell you from experience, when I finally started to understand this, my life changed miraculously. Because suddenly I mattered, I had a voice, and, things that I thought would never happen for me. I mean, I found a career I love. I found something I love. And before that, I thought, well, I'm not good enough. No one will ever have me. And so when we do the work, we get the reward.
Yeah.
Which is a life we love. And we are here, like I said, we're here for a purpose. We all have something we're going to do here. And to me, the most important thing is that we get the healing so we can walk in step, walk in our purpose, and help others.
Yeah, there is hope, and it really makes a difference to, look at your self-talk and to realize that you do matter and that you do have hope, and it will turn your life around as far as how you treat yourself, how you treat others. You start to realize that you really do matter.
Yeah, and that it seems like it's really simple. Like we should know that we have shame, and we think that, but we don't realize it often. And so I think hearing something like this, hopefully will put you in touch with that and make you think, wait a minute, is that what's going on with me? And then get the help that you want and you need. Because if you've never been able to talk about it and nobody's acknowledged it, it's all stuck inside. And that's where the shame just builds, because it does not have an outlet.
It just keeps on re-abusing you.
Yeah.
Every time you're feeling shame, you're experiencing that feeling of helplessness, of not mattering, of that you're basically re-abusing yourself whenever
right.
You're ashamed of yourself.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think, we live in a world that's really tuned into abuse and that what's not okay. And, yet we do it to ourselves. And the freedom of that, Kevin, I look in the mirror, and this is one of those, maybe this is shame because I feel like, oh gosh, they're going to judge me. But I can look in the mirror and I can say, I'm a child of God. I love the way you've created me, which wasn't always the truth.
Yeah.
I could barely even have my picture taken. I had so much self-loathing. And it is so wonderful, because now when I'm in relationships with people, I'm not concerned what they think about me or how they see me, because I see me, and and I know God sees me.
Yeah.
And I think that what we all want is to be seen and heard and believed. And it starts here, and it starts now with recognizing what it is that you're going through.
Yeah, it does. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
I think we can end in prayer now.
Yes.
Father, I thank you for all the blessings that you've given us, and especially for your blessing of unconditional love, that you are not ashamed of us, that you love us and you want to heal us and you want to be there for us, and you want us to see how much you love us and how much we matter to you, Lord. And I just pray that anyone who's listening who is feeling shame or feeling down on themselves would feel your love for them, and that would open up their hearts to you, Lord. And I just pray that they would be able to see themselves as you see them, and that would be a loving feeling in their lives. In your name I pray.
And I would add to that, Father, that not only that we see ourselves how you see us, but that we believe you are a good God, and that I know for so long I thought you could love everybody else, but you couldn't love me because I was me. Obviously, I wasn't good enough to be loved. And so, Lord, I pray anybody that's listening that is feeling that feeling, that you will touch their heart, Father, that you will help them to know they are loved, they are special, and that you are a good, good God. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen.